New Orleans, 1918. A city drowning in humidity, jazz, and something far darker than anyone could imagine. People thought they understood fear until a man with an axe started choosing victims at random. No pattern, no mercy, no fingerprints, no sound except the echo of splitting wood, and a single scream that never lasted long. He didn't steal, he didn't stalk, he simply entered homes by carving out their doors, like something not entirely human. But the real terror began when the killer wrote a letter to the newspapers claiming not to be a man, not even a murderer, but a demon from the hottest hell. He said one thing that changed the heartbeat of the entire city. On the night of March 19th, I will kill again, but I will spare any house where jazz music is playing. And so, on that night, New Orleans transformed. Every home lit up, every window open, every street vibrating with frantic jazz bands playing for their lives. A whole city begging an unseen killer for mercy. But here's the part that still haunts historians today. The Axeman never showed up, and he was never caught. Not then, not ever. So who was he? A man hiding behind madness? A supernatural entity? Or something far more disturbing? Because the letter came from nowhere. And after that night, the Axeman simply vanished. Before the name Axeman became a whispered curse in New Orleans, the city was a living heartbeat. It was 1918, a place where nights were louder than days, and music spilled from bars like it was part of the air itself. People laughed easily, doors stayed unlocked, and even the darkest alleys felt harmless under the glow of street lamps and jazz. But beneath this beauty, something ancient, something violent, was already awake. No one knew it yet. The terror began on May 23, 1918, inside a small grocery store owned by Joseph and Catherine Maggio. The couple had gone to bed like any other night, unaware that death had already chosen them. In the morning, their brothers walked in and found a scene so violent. The officers who arrived later struggled to breathe. Joseph's throat was cut so deeply it was almost severed. Catherine lay beside him, her head crushed, the sheets soaked dark red. The axe used in the attack? It was found in the corner, cleaned, placed carefully, almost respectfully. Not thrown, not dropped, placed. The killer had entered through the back door, but he didn't kick it open. He didn't force it. He removed a panel of the door, piece by piece, with a chisel, silently, patiently, like a carpenter who knew that no one would ever hear him. There were no fingerprints, no stolen money, no rage, just a calm, controlled brutality that made detectives feel like they weren't chasing a man, but a shadow. And then they saw it, the detail that still appears in nightmares. Just outside the door were faint footprints, but they weren't heavy, deep impressions. They were light, unnaturally light, like whoever made them barely touched the ground. Too small for a grown man, too soft for someone carrying an axe. As if the killer wasn't walking, but gliding. Rumors spread fast. A demon, a ghost, a creature that slipped through homes like smoke. New Orleans tried to shake it off, but one thing was certain. The killer was watching the city, learning its heartbeat, waiting to strike again. Because barely 1 month later, the Axeman returned. And this time, what he left behind didn't just scare the police, it made them realize they might not be hunting a human at all. The Maggio murders should have been an isolated nightmare, a horror the city could recover from. But New Orleans was about to learn that the Axeman didn't kill for money, or passion, or even revenge. He killed to feed something. On June 27, 1918, barely a month later, the Axeman struck again. This time, the victim was Louis B. Sumer, a grocer, and his mistress Anna Lowe. They slept behind their little shop, unaware that the same silent visitor who carved through the Maggio's door was now standing outside their own. Again, no signs of breaking in, no smashed window, no door forced open, just a panel removed, with the same sharp, precise cuts, the same chisel marks, like a signature. Louis was attacked first, his skull split open as he slept. Anna was left bleeding, her head crushed, but somehow still alive. When police questioned her in the hospital, Anna whispered something that made every officer in the room go still. He moved without sound, like he was already inside the room before I even opened my eyes. Detectives searched the house. Again, the axe belonged to the victims. Again, nothing was stolen. Again, the killer vanished without leaving even a single clear footprint. But then they found something new, something the Axeman had never left behind before. A message. On the back door of the shop, written in chalk, were strange markings. Not words, not symbols anyone recognized, but something that looked almost ritualistic. 3 shapes, sharp angles, a pattern repeated twice. It wasn't graffiti. It wasn't random. It was a sign, a calling card. Some officers joked nervously that it looked like a demon's handwriting. No one laughed, because by now, the fear was different. This killer didn't act like a human being. He slipped in and out of locked homes, always using the victim's own axe, always leaving without a trace. Women began sleeping with kitchen knives under their pillows. Men took turns staying awake through the night. But the Axeman didn't care. He was choosing his victims, watching, waiting, and his next attack would be even more brutal and far more public. Because the next time the Axeman struck, the whole city heard the scream. And what investigators found inside that house made them believe they were facing something far more intelligent and far more monstrous than a simple murderer. By late summer of 1918, New Orleans lived in a state of quiet panic. Every creak in the night felt like a warning. Every shadow looked like it was holding an axe. People still tried to go on with their lives, but the laughter was forced now. The jazz felt thinner, and behind every window, someone sat awake, listening. Then came August 5, 1918, the night the entire neighborhood woke up. The victim was Mrs. Schneider, a young pregnant woman. She had gone to sleep like any ordinary night, but around 9:45 p.m., neighbors heard a scream so sharp, so full of terror, that doors opened instantly. Inside her home, they found her staggering through the hallway, covered in blood. Her scalp was nearly split open, furniture knocked over, a mirror shattered. The entire room looked as if something had torn through it violently. Her husband rushed her to the hospital, where doctors were stunned. She and the unborn baby were still alive. But what she told police sent a cold ripple through the city. She said she never saw the man's face, never heard him break in, never heard footsteps. She simply opened her eyes, and he was already standing over her bed, silent, motionless, breathing like he wasn't human at all. And once again, the weapon used was their own axe. Police searched the house, and for the first time, they thought they might finally have a lead. Outside, near the backyard gate, they found a dark shape in the dirt, a partial footprint. But this one was different. It was long, narrow, and the heel was missing. Not stepped, not smudged, missing, as if the killer's foot simply didn't touch the ground there. Investigators stared at it, confused, frightened, realizing the same unsettling truth. The Axeman didn't move like a normal person. He didn't enter like one. He didn't exit like one. It was as if he appeared and disappeared without ever fully being in the room. The Schneider attack spread terror like wildfire. Women refused to sleep near windows. Men started forming night patrols. But deep down, everyone feared the same thing. You can lock your doors. You can load your gun. You can sit awake all night. But how do you protect yourself from something that slips into your home without sound, without logic, without fear? Because just when New Orleans thought the nightmare couldn't get worse, the Axeman chose his next victims. And this time, not even a full family, including a child, was spared from the horror. By 1919, New Orleans was no longer the city it used to be. Jazz still played in the streets, but now it sounded like a heartbeat trying to outrun fear. People whispered the Axeman's name like it might summon him, and every locked door felt just a little too thin. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared the city for what happened next. March 10, 1919, 3 a.m., a quiet street in the lower 9th Ward. Inside a small corner grocery lived the Cortimiglia family, father, mother, and their 2-year-old daughter. It should have been an ordinary night, but the Axeman doesn't knock. He doesn't warn. He simply appears where the fear is deepest. The neighbors woke up to sounds they would never forget. A thud, a muffled cry, then a scream that tore through the stillness like a blade. When they broke down the door, the scene inside froze them in place. Rose Cortimiglia, the mother, lay on the floor, blood dripping down her face, her arms trembling as she reached for her child. Her husband, Charles, was sprawled across the bed, skull shattered. Their tiny daughter lay between them, still, silent, gone. The entire room felt cursed, furniture overturned, walls streaked with blood, and in the corner, the same familiar terror. Their own axe, cleaned and placed neatly, deliberately, as if the killer took pride in his ritual. Rose survived, barely, but what she whispered later in the hospital made the newspapers explode. She said the killer had eyes that didn't look like they belonged to a man. Dark, hollow, watching her even as she reached for her daughter. And worst of all, he moved faster than anyone I've ever seen. Charles Cortimiglia, when he regained consciousness, confirmed something even more disturbing. He didn't run out. He didn't climb out. He just faded into the dark. For detectives, this was the breaking point. This wasn't robbery. This wasn't random. This was a pattern, a ritual growing more violent, more confident, more unstoppable. And while the city was drowning in grief, the Axeman was preparing something else. Something bigger. Something the world had never seen before. A message. A warning. A promise of death that would soon be delivered. Not with an axe, but with music. Because only days later, the Axeman sent a letter to the newspapers. A letter claiming he was a demon from hell, choosing who would live and who would die. And inside that letter, he gave the city a terrifying command that made every house in New Orleans do the same thing on the same night. Just 6 days after the Cortimiglia family was attacked, just 6 days after a child's funeral shattered the heart of New Orleans, the newspapers received something no one was prepared for. A letter, not signed by a man, not signed by anyone claiming to be human, but by the Axeman. The letter began calmly, almost politely. Then it sank into madness. They have never caught me, and they never will. I am not a human being, but a spirit, a demon from the hottest hell. He mocked the police, mocked the city, mocked the fear that now lived in every home. But then came the part that froze the entire state of Louisiana. I swear by all the devils that if the city plays jazz music on the night of March 19th, I will spare all those who play, but those who do not will feel my wrath. A killer demanding jazz music, a demon giving a specific date. People didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or run. But as the night approached, fear won. March 19th, 1919, New Orleans transformed into something it had never been before. Every bar was overflowing with musicians. Every home with a radio blasted frantic jazz. People who had never listened to music in their lives were clapping, shouting, forcing neighbors to play instruments just to stay alive. Some families hired entire bands to sit on their porch. Children were taught to bang pans like drums. Men danced on rooftops with horn players just to make sure the music never stopped. The entire city played like their souls depended on it, because maybe they did. And in the middle of all that noise, all that chaos, all that desperate music, the Axeman never came. Not a single attack that night. Not one scream. Not one door panel removed. Nothing. The demon had gotten what he wanted. But then, he vanished. After March 1919, attacks slowed, then stopped completely. No arrest, no body, no suspect, no explanation. It was as if he dissolved back into whatever darkness he came from. To this day, historians still debate. Was he a man, a serial killer hiding behind theatrics? Or did New Orleans really face something supernatural? Because the only unanswered question is the one that still keeps people awake. If he was just a man, why was he never caught? Why did he never slip up? Why did he move like a shadow? Why did he disappear the moment the city obeyed him? And the most chilling mystery of all, why did the Axeman write a letter predicting his own silence? Was it confidence? Arrogance? Or was it simply a demon returning to hell after collecting enough fear? Because someone out there knows the truth. Someone out there still remembers the face behind the axe. And until that secret is revealed, the Axeman of New Orleans will never truly be gone.